But I think that was the real moment. Like, I mean, Capital was the last job I ever had, but that Macklemore documentary and kind of like how I did that, like truly independent. Like it was just me, my cameraman. I edited the whole thing. Like it just was no anything. And I think that I mean, besides like the Kickstarter money that I raised for it, you know, but like and I got a whole nother story about like fraud and Kickstarter and all that. but like that was the moment where I felt like I always kind of had like an entrepreneur vibe, but then I was really like, all right,
gotta go.
You gotta turn this shit on and like figure out how to do all this stuff. And that was the last. I mean, I never looked back ever since.
So at some point you moved to LA.
Yeah, I moved to LA shortly after that.
Why?
Oh, because I was getting evicted.
Let's get it started.
Double O.
Free range, motherfucker. We back. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you. This is Double O, and we're back with the Free Range Podcast. Sorry for the hiatus. Been on the road. If you don't know, I spend my time outside of this as a touring DJ with an artist, Lupe Fiasco. And we've been on the road doing a couple dates. And then I also had rehearsals for a separate show with an artist, Nikki Jean, that I managed for Summerfest that just happened in Milwaukee. So had to kind of kick that in order and jump on a bunch of flights and get that done. But we are back, and I was finally able to edit this. I recorded it a couple weeks ago and really excited about this podcast. Wanted to explore the concept and idea about knowing your worth. Everybody always talks about that as a unit of measurement that you kind of use to know when other people are wasting your time and whether or not projects and or ideas are worth it based on, you know, how people feel or how people want to use you for their goals. But what if you turn some of that on yourself? When is it time to not abuse yourself and when it comes to knowing your worth? And when is it time to kind of pivot from things when the work that you are putting in is not equaling the value that you think you deserve? We often chase, especially in the entertainment industry, we often chase passion projects and definitely see value out of the execution of it. But maybe as a result of getting older, there's a point where you kind of have to look and say, as much as I love to do this, am I actually paying myself the amount that I should be getting for the time that I'm putting into this? And this is a point that my guest this week, Jabari Johnson, and I actually explore. I met him years ago at Baseline Studios. He was in college at Howard doing interviews for a bunch of different blogs and ended up evolving into an on-air talent doing video. And that led him down a path of passion, creating video content for artists. But at a certain point, he had to look at it, and as much as he loved it, realized that it wasn't going to get him the maximum worth out of his time, and made a bit of a pivot, surprisingly, into the event space. And that has turned into an amazing, one-of-a-kind success. I mean, he essentially is running the largest R&B party called RNBOnly in the U.S. He's doing 2,500 to 5,000 cap venues, touring the country on just R&B. He just went viral recently for turning down a $1 million investment, and that circles back around to the topic again about knowing your worth. And yeah, let's check it out. Let's explore Jabari Johnson from Colors Worldwide. RNBOnly is the party. Free Range is the podcast. Thanks for coming back. Let's check it out. Check 1 2 1 2.
This is Double O.
Welcome, Jabari.
What's up, bro?
Welcome to the Free Range Podcast. We are here today with the homie Jabari Johnson of Colors Worldwide. Yep. You may know him as the man shouting at you through autotune on stage at RNBOnly events, selling out worldwide, or the guy who randomly, strategically had a Macklemore documentary in the tuck for the weekend, the week that he decided to blow up. But what's going on, man?
Man, I'm glad you remember that was the week he decided.
Oh, no, I was just like, did Jabari just have...
It was so strategic, bro. When I did that, it was like, you know, I was talking to Macklemore about doing...
You don't have to be that close, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so I was talking to Macklemore about doing this documentary for like the longest time.
We'll get to that. We got to go through the process.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Where I wanted to start is I've known you for a minute now.
Bro, over a decade.
Yeah, you used to randomly show up... random late hours always.
Absolutely.
At Baseline and just be like here. And you were around for some of the classic Baseline moments.
Just conversations.
Yeah,
big conversations. Yeah.
But and Rico Tizio and probably all of the when Just Blaze TV, MySpace,
yep,
that whole era. But I want to start there. Like, so you were at Howard. Mm-hmm. When you were there, what were you trying to do? Like, what was the point of coming up there? What was the point of?
So it was just like, I had started early doing like interviews with a bunch of different people, right? Mm-hmm. So like, but I was always like, you know, from a young age, I was like, it's not just about always having a camera around and having whatever. I knew that people would be more comfortable when I did an interview if I had some sort of relationship with them, like with the camera not on, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I always like to like go to dinner with people or just chill with people or whatever, you know? And yeah, I was just doing interviews for, shout out to hiphopgame.com.
Hip Hop Game is really what started it for us as well.
Yeah, right.
Our first Kids in the Hall post on Hip Hop Game is what literally is like our internet,
that was a debut?
Yeah, like debut to the internet. It was a record that it was the first version of Wheels Fall Off that was originally over Just Blaze had a Lenny Kravitz remix instrumental that apparently nobody heard because when we put it out, it was like, oh, Just Blaze producing these guys. And it's just like, no, we just took this for a mixtape.
Yeah.
But shouts to Hip Hop Game. They've come up a few times on the podcast, and I'm glad to see that people remember that in the blog era. Okay, so you were shooting for them.
Yeah, I was. So basically, like, I was writing for, first shout out to John Gotti, man, Smoking Section. And Smoking Section gave me my first real look ever. Like, I did phone interviews for them. And I was like, I remember my first interview ever was with this dude, Juwan Lee, music video director. Mm-hmm. That was the first, like, phone interview I ever did. And then I started doing more stuff. I did like one with Fabulous and a bunch of other people. Then I was like, just being like arrogant, quite honestly. I was like, yo, nobody's reading like the byline, or like nobody cares that like they might read this interview, but like nobody knows I did it. Yeah. So I was like, I have to get like some camera time. You know what I'm saying?
So your entry into the filming space was just sheer off of face needs to be.
I need to be seen. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't, like, really the interest was because I cared so much about hip-hop and I love the culture and I'm from the culture and da-da-da. But I needed some sort of credit, you know what I mean? And so that's when I started picking up the camera. And then, so to fast forward to, like, going up to Baseline and stuff, it was just, like, I don't even remember, bro, who, like, my first, it could have easily been, like, Young Chris, or Guru, or you guys. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it was one of the, like, I was connected to so many different people, you know, from like Guru being another Howard alum, and then I was doing really early on stuff with like Young Guns and like and Chris specifically. I used to go to North Philly and just go to his crib, and you know, I remember I was such a big fan of Chris. I mean, still am. It's my man. But like, I remember like I went to his house one day, and like I was like, I just wanted to ask him, like, can I put the Rockefeller chain on real quick? You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't. I never did. But yeah, it was just like through those relationships, I was just be at baseline, and then I would eventually get to the point of like pulling the camera out and recording some of those conversations.
For those people that are in college now that are like, how in the fuck did you do that? How did you connect with your idols basically at the time?
Yeah, man, because that's what they were, man. I mean, I was in high school listening to, you know, I know every Just Blaze record, you know, every Young Guns record. Listen, like Rockefeller was like holy grail of music labels. So, okay, I knew, I was like, I want to interview these people. But I know they're not just going to let me, Jabari, interview them. So I got down with places that I knew would, if I say, hey, I'm Jabari from Hip Hop Game, or if I'm Jabari from Smoking Section, they would do it. And that's really it. That was the cheat code. You know what I mean? I just like, I was working with these, like, these were some of the top hip hop blogs at the time. And so, yeah, once I pretty much had like that stamp, like it was definitely going to go on here. And that led me early on to like realize, make things a no-brainer for people. You know what I'm saying? Like if you have an audience already, people are going to want to be in front of your audience. So if you say like, yeah, I can guarantee that this is going to be on this, then it's like why would you just want to, when you're asking people about giving you an opportunity, you want to make it an opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, that's actually the most important thing. Big Pooh, I just posted this on Instagram, just talking about not chasing, you know, people to put you on. Yeah. And I had been talking about this with somebody else. It's like, I got put on in the music industry through sidekicks, selling T-Mobile sidekicks.
That's how, really?
Yeah. And, but what and before that, I was, you know, like you in college, just like I would cold call A&Rs. I was just like, whatever I could do to set up. Yeah. Being in Philly, like whatever I could do to get as close to the industry as possible. Mm-hmm. But the minute that I had something that was an even trade, in other words, they wanted this sidekick. Yeah. And I wanted that relationship. Yep. It makes the exchange so much easier. Yeah, for sure. So I always tell people, it's just like, make sure when you are trying to get somebody to quote unquote put you on, like no one's just going to just be like, oh, hey little guy, yeah, come over here. It's like, oh no, you need this, I need this, cool. Yep. Make this even exchange happen. Whatever level that even exchange is. That even exchange doesn't have to be you know, oh, here's $1 million and okay, now it can be, you know, an interview, because you're helping a lot of people, especially probably at the time, people like Guru who they're not in front of the camera all the time. They're going to want to have those conversations.
Exactly. Yep. And also we got to remember, this is pre-social media.
Yeah, this is, you know what I mean? Barely YouTube knows what it's doing.
Yeah. So like a lot of these things, people were like, it was still kind of like a gatekeeper. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like, people were like, oh, I can be on Hip Hop Game. Like, yeah, that's a great opportunity because everybody goes to Hip Hop Game. Now it's a lot more difficult because, you know, if somebody like Guru wants to get his message to the people, he'll just post on his Instagram.
Yeah,
you know?
But we didn't have that at the time.
Yeah.
And so you're building what did you get out of experience-wise and just maybe even knowledge-wise? What did you get the most out of those random late-night drive up to New York?
Well, I was getting $500 a month for a Hip Hop Game, so that was dope. I was doing it for free at first, of course, as anything that you love to do. You don't make money at first, but man, for me, it was like I was just getting insight into how these things were created that I was consuming and loved so much. You know, like, and I was just like, it was all resume for me. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to. I had a goal. I was like, when I was at Howard, I was like, I want to do one interview a week, and that was a audacious goal. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm in DC. This is not like the stomping grounds for everybody. So I was always going back and forth to New York, but a lot of artists were coming through DC at the time. You know, you gotta hit DC when you're on that I-95, when you're going doing shows in Virginia and that whole strip. It's like many people come through DC. So I was like, all right, cool. If all these people are coming through here, let me get them while they're here. And also I can go up to New York. I can go up to Philly, 2 hours to Philly, 4 hours to New York. And I can just talk to these people. And it was just like, I can build my resume like this. I'm learning how to, I'm in school for advertising, which is in the journalism department. So I was like learning how to even do interviews and, you know, talk to people in that regard. So it was really just like, instead of doing internships, I was doing that. And I was just building the resume.
And then when you get out of school, what's the first thing that you end up doing?
Sleeping on my dad's basement. I had my mom and dad were split up, and so I was only at my dad's house for the summers in New York. Mm-hmm. He lives like in Westchester County, like upstate New York, not too far from the city, like maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. But I was like, I had so many interviews under my belt. Like, I mean, at this time, like by the time I graduated, I had like interviewed everybody from Justin Bieber to Nicki Minaj. And mind you, they were nowhere near what they are now, but they were still massive stars, you know. And so, a lot of people thought that I was gonna be like working somewhere like an MTV or hosting 106. You know what I mean? Funny story about that. I was super close to like hosting 106 in Park, but I got cut at the last round.
Is that when Bow Wow replaced you?
Yeah, they didn't replace me, but that was like,
Bow Wow got you, son.
Yeah, basically Shad Moss came through and got me out the way. But yeah, I was super far in the process, and yeah, so I thought that was going to be my route, was like hosting some sort of like music countdown show
on TV.
Because at that time, we never would have thought that music countdown shows were never going to be a thing. Yeah. And yeah, it was just, I thought it was going to be like on-air talent. And so none of that really panned out. Did all these auditions, blase. And then I was on Mashable.com, which is still alive and kicking. Mm-hmm. And there was like, I was just looking at like social media type of gigs and stuff like that. And there was a job for EMI/Capitol Records. And it was running social media over there. And I was like social media like coordinator. But this is the first time they had ever hired anybody with social media in the title, right? So I was like, went in, applied for the position, got it. Literally, like, the way I got the job was pulling up my YouTube channel with all these artist interviews. And I was like, if I did all this, I'm sure I can do it for your artist over here. Put it on their YouTube channel. I don't necessarily have to be in the content, you know what I mean? But I know, like, the mechanisms of how this digital video stuff works. And then when I got over there, I didn't really end up doing any social media stuff. It was so, because they hired 3 people at the same time with kind of like the same title. Forget when we all shared this like small ass office, and I forget what it was called. It's called like the Quad or something. I don't know. It was called something. It was like they had like one person's office and like all 3 of us in there. It was.
But you got an office,
yeah. Yeah, it was dope. We had a door versus like having like, you know, a little cubicle, like a coordinator or something. And so, but my role specifically became, I had kind of created the role. It was just to handle the digital video of a lot of our artists. So I kind of was running like a mini production studio. Was
there things that you did specifically within, because obviously you came in social media coordinator, mm-hmm. Were there things you did to create that role, like, or just it kind of naturally happened?
Yeah. I mean, I might have done a few things on some social media tip at first, but they just saw that my strong suit was video.
Because like, did you pitch them like, "Yo, I should be doing this instead"?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I was like, you know, one of my first projects was like Cali Swag District Teach Me How to Dougie, mm-hmm. And like I was like, let's do like a Dougie tutorial, and like M-Bone, which is one of the artists in the group, rest in peace. But I was like, okay, let's like film this part of you doing this, and then like we built like some like landing page, and like I'll film this part, and then like those videos just took off. Yeah. Like the videos started getting like, I think millions of plays, and once we were doing that, you know, they were like, oh, okay, he knows like how people are consuming video. It's not just about like, I think for them, a lot of like they thought digital video was like a music video.
Yeah, that was the only piece of
content.
content.
You know what I mean? And like, I was like, nah, we have to do like behind the scenes content. We have to like shoot them when they come in the office. We have to shoot them when they're like running around New York. And like what I was doing with Cali Swag was then like transpired into me doing it for like a bunch of other artists. And then ultimately is like what really led to like me kind of making a name for myself over there was the work I was doing with Tiny Temper. And then that ultimately led from like my departure for the label too.
Well, what was going on before the departure with Tiny Temper?
So Tiny was like, he was coming, basically he had this song called Pass Out, which was like a huge record in England. Still to this day, like, well, not his most popular song in America, but the biggest song he did in America was called Written in the Stars. But nonetheless, it was just one of his biggest songs, kind of like debut single. And he was coming back and forth to America, and I was like, we need to make content around this guy about how he's a massive star in England, but like nobody knows him in America. And like that's interesting. You know what I mean? And they were like, all right, cool. Like, we'll give you a little budget, run around with the camera. And I hired like one of my friends who, shout out to Rand. He ended up like, we spent the summer going on like radio promo tours, which you know how those radio promo tours are. It's like literally just get up early in the morning, go do a radio show. And then like you might have like, it's like, for those that don't know, like radio shows are like when like The Real 93 presents this summer Blueface, Saweetie, and a gang of other people that you hear on our station all the time at some amphitheater or arena. Like we were doing those kind of shows. And we were just running around with like, at the time, LMFAO, Mike Posner. These are the people who are on these shows with us. Yeah. And so we're just like chilling with these guys all the time. And yeah, it was just like, just literally shooting content around this whole thing. And then we built such a rapport. It's crazy how things come full circle, but we built such a rapport and a friendship, me, his manager, and him. They were like, we're doing on a big tour in the UK. We want you to come and shoot this, like, and make like a tour documentary. And I was like, what? Yeah, it was kind of a mix of me like pitching that, but then them being like, yeah, we want you to do it. And it was back to all about the comfortability thing. Like, we had such a good relationship when the camera was off. They allowed me to, they just opened up when the camera was on. If you're friends with somebody when the camera's not rolling, just like you and I are right now, you know what I mean? Like, I'm more willing to say any and everything. Yeah. Because there's a relationship outside of when this camera and mic is on. And so I just always made that like, I was just, that was my biggest thing always. And now full circle, literally in like a week. Oh, no, not a week. In like 2 weeks, I'm going to London and he's getting married. And so I'm going to his wedding.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Tiny, congrats.
So, yep.
So then what led to the departure?
Oh, yeah. I left because they asked me to come and do that tour documentary. Mm-hmm. And the tour documentary was something that the label wasn't willing to cover and pay for. Basically, it was like unprecedented for somebody my age to go to another country and to get a budget to kind of do this. Yeah. And they were like, we will pay for you to go over there and shoot like maybe a few shows for like 5 days, but we won't pay for you to go on like a month-long tour and be over there for like over a month shooting rehearsals and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I can't shoot a documentary for like 3 shows. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even possible. So they were like, well, you know, okay, so, but we're not going to fund it. And I was like, all right, well, Tiny and them said they were going to fund it. And they were like, well, if you go over there for that long, like, you have a job. Yeah. So they were like, are you going to quit? Because they were just thinking to me, they were like, this guy's not going to quit this job. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, he has a full-time job here. we pay him decently. And it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, bro, I'm
out.
I'm out. Like, these people said they're going to pay for it. Like, come on. And,
were you thinking about what you were going to do after that month? Or you were just like...
Sort of not. Because I had this, like, halfway temporary gig with, like, BET. Also, I was doing, like, interviews with BET Digital. And I had, like, I had, like, 2 jobs at the time. But the BET thing was only paying, like, a little bit of money, like maybe a few grand a month for me to produce a certain amount of videos for them. But I was like, yo, at least I got the BET thing to fall back on when I come back. But I didn't know how crazy of a process it was going to be to edit an hour-long documentary.
Yeah.
Like, that took 4 months. I was thinking I was just going to come back and, like...
2 days.
Yeah, it's going to be a wrap, you know what I mean? And so, like, oh, my God. Me and my boy, like, we spent 4 months straight in Williamsburg just, like, cutting
Was it because you overshot or just because it was just the size of...
Just the scope of the project. Yeah, it would normally take somewhere around that time. I mean, if I had more of a team around, we probably could have cut it down 2 months. You know what I mean? But it was just me and an editor. So we had to watch everything again, whiteboard, notes. This is the chunks. This is a story that we're going to tell. Because a lot of times when you're making docs, like, you go in wanting to tell a certain story, but depending on the footage you get, that's a whole nother story, So, yeah, I think I wanted to tell a certain specific story about him, and it didn't end up being the story that we told, but it was still a good story.
Did he enjoy what you guys did?
Yeah, for sure. He enjoyed it. I remember, I remember, like, he told me his mom, I think, watched it, and I think his mom was crying during it. And then even, like, Macklemore told me that one time, too. Like, said, like, oh.
How'd you guys distribute it? Because I remember watching it. I just don't remember how.
So this is the thing that, like, sucks so bad about that. So at the time, what happened was, so I left. Disturbing London is the company that is his management company. And then he's signed to Parlophone, which was under EMI.
Right.
What happens is when we finish the doc, a lot of people know EMI doesn't even exist anymore. It's like EMI literally goes bankrupt, bro.
In that time
when we finished the doc. So, like, they had owned the performance footage or something like that. Like, the all the stuff that was in the doc of, like, him on stage, that was something that EMI produced and they paid for. But, like, there's no more EMI. You know what I mean? So, like, we were, like, in this weird, like, yo, who owns this? You know, who owns this part of the film? And so, like, we were, like, talking with, like, different distribution companies and stuff like that. And ultimately, we ended up just having to put it out, like, non-monetizable on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so, but this is, what year is this? This is, like, 2014, 2013 maybe. And at the time, maybe this is even 2012. I'm bad with years. But this is like, imagine putting in 2012 an hour-long documentary on YouTube when people are barely getting through 5-minute videos on YouTube. Like, YouTube had just extended their thing from 15 minutes to, like, an hour, like, a month before we uploaded it. You know what I mean? And so we were just like, but we did this, like, we did a whole big screening at the YouTube space in London, and we got YouTube involved and stuff like that, but it was just premature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's still, like, it's a really great film. I'm super proud of it. It was my first time directing a feature-length doc, but it just fell on, deaf ears, and people weren't ready to consume content on YouTube. Like, this is before YouTube apps on TV and stuff like that. But it's called Tiny Tempa: Discovering Destiny. For those that want to go check it out, it's just a story about him being the first hip hop artist to ever sell out an arena tour in the UK. It was a really big feat.
Yeah,
at the time.
I remember when Pass Out came out, and then there was another record that he had with Labyrinth, right? before Written in the Stars. There were 2 back-to-back.
So Pass Out was with Labyrinth, and then Frisky was with Labyrinth as well. Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh, they cracked the code. Because every time Kids in the Hall used to be on tour, we would be doing our radio runs in the UK.
Yeah.
They would always ask us about like, oh, what's it going to take for, UK rappers
to like
to
blow
crack
up over
here.
Yeah.
And I was always just kind of
still hasn't been done, by the way. Not in a
it's because what I always called
mainstream way.
I was like, you got to figure out the Slick Rick formula, right? Like there's some Slick Rick. We are always going to have an issue in terms of, like we talked about before the podcast, like credibility, where somebody's from.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that person that's done the same stuff that I've done? And so I think that's always going to just be a general issue when it comes to Black people coming from other countries.
Yep.
But I do think he figured out a way, because I mark him as the beginning of this conversation now that is in full swing. It may not be mainstream, but it's not as hard as it was before, where you can, and Drake has had a lot to do with it as well, but like where you can talk about foreign artists, grime artists, coming here and doing decent sized venues and doing all that. Because, even for Tiny, like, let's say at the same time, Emily Sande had maybe come out a little bit before him.
Yeah, right around the same time. Mm-hmm.
And, she sold 2 million records, something crazy like that, in the UK, which was insane.
Yeah.
And then comes here and sells like 200,000 first week and has to open for John Legend.
Yeah.
And it's like the transfer is so weird and difficult. And
but it's easier with a singer than it is a rapper.
A white singer.
No, I'm saying it's like for an artist. Like, I just think with rap, the accent is the biggest thing. That's the biggest feedback we always heard.
Yeah.
It's just like Black Americans like their things a certain way.
But remember, Slick Rick was able to do it.
But did he have an accent, though?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He did 2 things really well that I always tried to convey to everybody there. He slowed down.
Yeah.
Right? Enough. And he knew America. He talked about things that were relevant here. You think about Children's Story, you think about those records. They aren't like I was in East London doing, whatever. Yeah. It was like, oh no, this is just a general kind of story vibe in a way that everybody can kind of recite.
Yeah.
And, but then he played into his Britishness in a weird way that I think is always hilarious, because like he would call people like crumbs and oranges. Like he would play into it a different way that apparently worked. But it's so funny because obviously actors do it all the time. Like, what? That dude's British? Like that dude's British?
But it's they mask the accent when they're acting, right? So a lot of people don't know. But I think a big thing now, I think the conversation, 5 to 10 years ago was when is a British artist going to do it? When is a British rapper going to pop in America? And quite honestly, I think now, bro, I go to London like 2 times a year at least. And those guys don't give a fuck about popping over here anymore. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, you literally have so much industry built over there now, that, and when I say over there, I just kind of mean like, not just England, but Europe and just worldwide. Like, they go to Australia and tour, they go all over, but like, they might not hit America, but it's like, guys can become millionaires now from rap in England. And that's a brand new thing. Yeah. Whereas that's been happening here for us for the past 20 years. Like, it's very, very new over there. And I think that they're content with, they've got the same problem that we do now, which is like too much rap,
Yeah, it's interesting. But I still love what they're doing, because it is coming from the thing about hip hop is like, you can drop it off anywhere and it's going to have its key components that whether you go to a favela in Brazil, whether you are in Israel. I was at the 7-Eleven and I'm listening to Arabic trap music, like
It's
with
crazy,
auto-tune
right?
on,
Yeah. Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
the Lex Luger kit, like
Lex
all
Luger kit.
all the signifiers are there,
For sure.
but in Arabic, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that can happen now, but the dope thing about the UK is they've always had a vibe that was different than us.
Yeah.
That I think now finally has figured out its way to, that swag can be upsold in a way that's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and again, I actually still kind of have to credit people like Drake and Virgil.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, there were people that were like, no, grime is awesome, you know, and super dope, and this is a thing you should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
And so, you know, seeing it play out now, no, that was what I was going to say too, is like, yeah, they don't care. They don't care whether it works in America or not, because the world is so big now because of the internet that it's just like,
they don't need it to.
Who cares if Iowa doesn't know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you're 5 months post quit the job.
Yeah.
You finally have the video out.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I just spent 5 months of my life doing this. So what happens?
Well, the good thing is it didn't do what I wanted it to in terms of people seeing it, right? And I always think that everything has its, you know, if it's meant to be seen, it'll be seen, right? Like it's on the internet, it's live forever. But what it did do is, man, the relationship that I have with Tiny, with his manager, Doomy, I mean, now, you know, with his family, like, you know, I went to go see his baby. Like, I mean, it's just the relationship that I have with those people, you know, and just even, you know, those guys are like my brothers, you know, Doomy, you know, those are, like, I'm like the first guy they call when they come to LA, vice versa, when I come to London. And, you know, I work out of their office when I'm in London. Like, it's just, it's the sort of like lifelong friendship that I have with them that is just not gonna, who cares about people not seeing a documentary? Exactly. Like, we shared a certain time of our lives together and experienced a lot of cool things. And now we'll just experience new things. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think that I was most happy about that, especially because my boss at the time had told me, she said, never follow an artist. Never, like, do you know what you're missing if you leave this job? Never follow an artist, ever. And I was like, yo, 6 months later, the company folded. Like,
like, I would have been gone.
Yeah, like, so, but yeah, that was it. And also, aside from the relationship, I knew that I could do something big like that. Yeah. I knew that I could, like, do a feature-length doc.
Yeah, because now you had 1 hour-long joint.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so now it led to a whole host of other problems. It's like me, because I was like, oh, I did this, right? Yeah. And so now my whole thing was like, I was trying to pitch myself for, you know, different, like, to be considered for different opportunities, whether it was like, you know, I was going the agent route and just sending my work a bunch of places. And bro, let me tell you, when you're in that world, like, trying to be a music documentarian is just a hard thing in general, right? But a lot of that world is based on, like, credits and, like, where your credits are. And I didn't have any sort, like, I'm on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Like, my shit is not, I don't have an IMDb page. Like, you can't go to
it would just be YouTube.
Yeah, you know, literally, I have a host of shit on YouTube. Yeah. But nobody cared about that stuff at the time. So it was like, I was trying to get gigs and opportunities, bro, and, like, nobody was biting or nothing. You know what I mean? So it was just like, it was really difficult to get outside work. And even to this day, like, you know, the only real credits I have in that world, like, I did 1 documentary for BET. I was, like, an associate producer on it. And then what else did I do? Oh, like, it's stuff from, like my Macklemore documentary has been licensed. So, like, I've sold it to places. And then I was like, you know, because of my work with Nicki early on, I was on her Behind the Music on, like, E. But those are my credits in that space. It's not like shit like.
So
you did this.
So then what happens next? What ends up being the next thing?
So, oh man, a lot of being broke in Brooklyn. It's that whole era is a blur for me because it's like I remember coming back, finishing the doc. Well, I'll tell you, the next thing was the Macklemore documentary. Okay. So,
what kind of point in time was that? I mean, like the amount of time in between those things.
I want to say, I'm horrible with time.
Yeah.
So the Macklemore documentary could have actually happened before the Tiny documentary, but I think the Tiny documentary happened before the Macklemore. So, yeah. What happened is, basically I was like, yeah, I think it happened after. So I was like, good friends with Macklemore, Ben and Ryan.
From what?
From the same type of thing, like
interviews.
You know what I mean? Like just
being around.
Yeah, just from being around, interviews, all that stuff. And at the time, Macklemore, nobody. I mean, not nobody knew him because I always feel like I get put on to people late. Like I feel like I was put on to y'all's music late. You know what I mean? Well, School's My Hustle wasn't the first one.
No, that's the first album.
It was the first one.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So School's My Hustle, I peeped that, and then I was like, but it was like maybe a few months after but for me, in that time, being like a hype beast kid.
Oh yeah, you're like, oh man.
Yeah, fuck, I'm late. You know what I mean? Like, I have a funny story about like listening to Kid Cudi and that too. Like, do you know Heather Perfection?
Yeah, of course.
Remember? Okay, so Heather, a good friend of mine, she used to always be like, listen to Kid Cudi. You need to listen to this. This a kid named Cudi. And I was like, that shit looks corny. And like I just like maybe I was like 6 months late of listening to like the project before it came out. And I was like, this is amazing. Fuck, I can't believe I'm this late on it. Oh my God. And like, Kid Cudi's like my favorite artist now. And I was just like, at the time I was like devastated because of how late I was, And so anyways, back to the like.
Yeah, Macklemore. So Macklemore Ben and Ryan.
Yeah, I was listening to. They had this EP called the Versus EP, and it was just like them two on like a cover, like black and white. And I had peeped it, and like he had put out a bunch of other stuff before as like a solo artist, but that was like their first project. And I had a lot of friends from Howard, from Seattle, and I was like, "Yo, do you know about this?" And like they were like, "Yeah, of course." Like Macklemore was like, he's big in Seattle, and I was like, fuck, I'm late. These people know about this shit before me. Like, and so I sent them an email or something like, hey man, do you want to, when are you going to be in New York? Like, I'd love to get you on this BET thing I have. And so like, they just came to New York and we just like, I don't know, we went to like some little Jewish restaurant I like or something. And like, we just like chopped it up and like, that was it. And then I started like, bringing the camera around and they would have shows and they would be like, yo, come to this show. And it was like super tiny ass shows. Yeah. And at the time, this guy's like managing himself. And he's like, so he's the one responding to the emails and stuff. Yeah. So I was like, he was like, yo, I need help finding a manager. So I was like trying to link him with some managers I knew. All this stuff is going on. His agent at the time ended up becoming his manager, Zach.
My old agent.
You speak with Zach?
Yeah,
too?
before we went to ICM.
Oh, okay. So, we just developed this relationship from probably about a year, maybe a year and some change. And I told him I was doing this like documentary series. I was like doing a Kickstarter for it, all this stuff, and I really wanted him to be on it. I wanted to make like, instead of just a little short interview, I wanted to do like a longer form thing. And he was like, yeah, sounds dope. I'm into it. Where do you want to do it at? And I was like, well, what's your schedule? And he was like, oh, we're going to be playing Lollapalooza, or we're going to be back home in Seattle, and we're going to like shoot this music video. And I was like, all right, bet. I probably want to do it in your hometown instead of, a random show, Lollapalooza. Yeah. It would just be more contextual to shoot it in Seattle. He was like, okay, cool. So he gave me the dates and the whole like run of the video. And at this time, man, everything with those guys was like super homegrown. So like Ryan was directing the videos. Yeah. Like his girlfriend, now wife, at the time was like his tour manager. So she was like coordinating a lot of stuff. Hollis, who's now my really good friend, she was like the video producer. John was the video director as well. It was like him and Ryan doing stuff. It was like all this. It was just like a really like tight knit circle, and I was just coming into that. And so literally, bro, we get off the plane, like we fly out to Seattle, we get all the like production stuff and notes from them, and I'm the only person there like shooting like content, like it's just them shooting the video. Yeah. And at the time, I had no idea. I didn't even know what the song was called, right? Like I just get off the plane to Seattle and we start shooting, and I was there for like maybe 4 days. And the song ends up being Thrift Shop, and like, bro, he goes in the car, he like we come to some like, do you know that opening scene of the video where like everybody's kind of like skateboarding and running toward the camera?
Yeah.
Yep. Like that's the scene that I was like coming on, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like it was just because I didn't know what was going on. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even think music was playing. And so that was like we wrapped that day or whatever, and then he's like, let me play you some songs so you can hear the song. Yeah. And so like he plays the song, and bro, I'm in the car like, what is this? Like, like no lie, I'm thinking like, this is mad silly. Like, what? Like this is the song you about to do a video for? Like I was just like, I didn't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I was a huge fan of him, and I was always kept it real with him. And so he's like, somebody like turns off a song, like, what'd you think? And I was like, it's cool. And then he goes to the next song and he plays this song called White Walls with Hollis and Schoolboy Q. Yeah. And I was like, this is a slapper, bro. Like, this is what, like, this shit is hard right here. Like, that song just blew me away. And he's like, yeah, but this is the first song we're going to put out. This is the video we're shooting. And I was like, all right, cool. And so, boom, we just go back to, like, shooting. And he's, like, grabbing chicken from Ezel's for everybody. And, like, we just, like, and then as I start to be on the set more and I'm starting to see, like, the creative and I'm starting to see, like, playback, I'm like, oh, I think this song might kind of, like, take off. This is kind of cool. Like, I see what he's doing here. But it's, like, really silly. And then there's one point where they're like, hey, Jabari, you want to be in the video? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm literally, like, interviewing everybody, like, doing this stuff. And so I'm in the video for, like, 2 seconds. I have, like, there's this part where, like, I wear these, like, Gucci glasses or whatever or something. Or I have this, like, fake Gucci hat on. That's what it is. And I'm like, but it's like, yo, it was just the craziest thing. So we end up leaving, packing up, and, we did all the, like, interviews, B-roll at his house and stuff like that. And I'm like, yo, let me know when you guys are going to drop the video because it would be cool for this documentary. Because, yo, the whole doc really told the story of who they were. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I was like, let me know when you guys drop the video so I'll kind of, like, coordinate and drop the doc around the same time. Like, yo, bro, it had to be no later than, like, 6 days or some shit. Like, I went home, I started cutting the doc, Yeah. And, like, then they're like, yo, the video's out. And I was like, they just told me when it was out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I was like, what the fuck? I thought you guys were going to tell me, like, up. Yo, like, this is when it's going to come out. And, like, it was so fast, bro. And so I'm in my crib in Brooklyn, like, and I'm like, yo, I got to, like, cut this shit. I got to get this video out. Because I'm like, all these views are happening. And, like, the way they always used to do stuff at that time, they were like, let's drop the video. And then they would have some other announcement. So they were like, they dropped the video and, like, the album was coming out the next Tuesday or something. This is back when albums came out on Tuesdays. So, bro, I'm like, I probably stayed up, like, 3 days in a row to, like, finish this doc. Yeah. I'm, like, getting, like, royalty-free music, like, putting shit in here. And I'm just trying to, like, I had to get all this shit signed off on from them because I used a lot of B-roll for, I used a few of his music videos. Yeah. So I had to go through all that whole, like, legal process and get all this, like, approvals and shit. And I think it was either the day before the album dropped or the day the album ends up dropping, I dropped my doc. And, like, I sent it to them and they called me like, yo, this is incredible. Like, damn, like nobody's ever told a story on us like this and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm just like watching the views and like the views are cool. Cause I had like a little email list and all that stuff. And so like the views are cool. And like, I think I went to sleep, woke up. And like next thing you know, I had like Google Alerts set up, right? Like Jabari Macklemore or something like that. Macklemore documentary. And next thing you know, I see like USA Today. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Like it was a post on like USA Today about this shit. And then it was like, bro, it was this hella real like outlets, you know what I mean? And then I had this whole piece on The Atlantic, like, and it was like, this is like massive publications, you know what I mean? Writing about this shit. They were like, they're like writing about Macklemore, but then they were like, there were some people who were just like reviewing my 15-minute documentary, you know what I mean? And I was like, yo, this is crazy. And this shit just kind of skyrocketed. And it was like, you know, it got like, maybe like 100,000 views in like the first 2 days. And I was like, damn, this is so crazy. And like people started calling me about it and stuff like that. And that's really when, like, you know, because at the time I'm not working at Capitol. But I think that was the real moment. Like, I mean, Capitol was the last job I ever had, but that Macklemore documentary and kind of like how I did that, like truly independent. Like it was just me, my cameraman. I edited the whole thing. Like it just was no anything. And I think that I mean, besides like the Kickstarter money that I raised for it, you know, but like oh, and I got a whole nother story about like fraud and Kickstarter and all that. but like that was the moment where I felt like I always kind of had like an entrepreneur vibe, but then I was really like, all right,
gotta go.
You gotta turn this shit on and like figure out how to do all this stuff. And that was the last. I mean, I never looked back ever since.
So at some point you moved to LA.
Yeah, I moved to LA shortly after that.
Why?
Oh, because I was getting evicted. Yeah,
well, there you go.
I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and we were like basically just, you know, she had moved from Toronto, and we were living in this pretty cool apartment, a little 1-bedroom, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I have no money coming in.
Yeah.
The lease is up. We are going to get evicted, or like we're just gonna not pay the rent. Well, I don't know, but like something's gonna happen because I don't have the money to pay for this apartment. And so I was like, my mentor he lives in LA, but he has this program called Creative Minds in Cannes, and he takes students, like film students, to the Cannes Film Festival every year. Now it's grown into like every major film festival in the world. But at the time, it was just that one. And he was like, I'm going to be gone in France for 2 weeks. And I had been through the program and stuff 2 years. And so he was like, I'm going to be, you know, I got the program. I know you're going through it with your girl and, you know, money and stuff like that. If you want, you can like live at my crib. And actually he was gone because he was going on some like Euro tour or something like that. So he was gone for 2 months. Yeah. And so he was like, yo, you can just stay in the crib in Inglewood and, you know, kind of figure it out. And so I had like a little going away party in New York, and I was like, all right, I gotta get to, you know, LA, whatever. And I moved out, and that was it. And I was like, I thought I was gonna be back in New York after those 2 months, but see, simultaneously during all this, I'm having these little parties in New York too.
Okay, so you
kind of paying some sort of bills.
Okay.
But so yeah, like I was doing this little party called Surprise Party at the same time I was doing all the film stuff. Yeah. And that's how I was like living, but it wasn't enough to like, you know,
really live.
Yeah, to really live. Yeah. And so yeah, that's how I got out to LA. And then I had this like multi-channel YouTube network called Volume Visual. And I was just doing all kinds of like random stuff to get money. And then I moved into my boy's, my other friend's couch. I was staying on couches for a good, like, 6 months. The typical LA story.
Gotta do it.
Yeah. And then I started Colors shortly after that.
So what made you... So Colors was essentially just the new iteration of the surprise party?
Exactly. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. So when I started, like, I was always, like, I'm a, like, halfway only child, right? So, like, I have 4 half-sisters that I grew up with, like, but I only spent 3 months of the year at my dad's house with them. Yeah. So the majority of my life, I was spent only child with my mom. So I've always been, like, kind of, like, half social, half, like, introverted. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm at my mom's house as a kid, like, I have my friends and stuff like that, but I got all my own shit. Everything is, like, how I want it to be, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, when I'm with my sisters, I gotta share, I gotta be around people, I gotta do all this stuff.
Fucking siblings.
Yeah, you know, so, but, so I've always had this sort of, like, fierce internal, like, desire to just get what I need to get done. But then I also like to be social at times. So I was always, like, having, like, events and, like, people, you know, coming to stuff. I did this song with, like, Pusha T and Nicki Minaj, like, back in the day. Yeah. And I was trying to be on, like, my, like, DJ Khaled kind of stuff. And I had, like, this big party in D.C. at Commonwealth, like, to, like, release it. I always, like, gathering my friends together.
How did you, in those first parties, how were you connecting the dots? I mean, what people are always afraid about when they throw events is nobody's going to show up. Yeah. So what were you doing to make sure people showed up, even if it's just 50 people?
Making it free. Yeah. That was a big thing, man. I always was like, it doesn't matter about the money at first. Mm-hmm. What really matters is the audience. Yeah. So if we get people's emails, at the time was the biggest thing for me. It was just like, you ain't coming in this door if I don't have your email. Yeah. You know, because I need to be able to communicate with you in the future. Yeah. And I just stuck by that for a very, very long time. But that was it. I would make it free before a certain time, you know what I mean, to kind of force people to get there early. And that was how people were coming in. Then we started to make it $5, $10, whatever, you know, sort of cheap price. And then we would just, then it was.
You stayed at the same place, even though you were
in New York.
Charging?
Nah. We started switching up places. Like, I mean, man, we would do stuff everywhere from, like, so many places I don't even remember the names, but like, damn. There's a place called Kinfolk right now, but it used to be called something else. I forget.
How did you know when to charge?
We knew that I think it was like how early it was kind of packed out. Okay. You know, so if it was like a lot of people there, we knew that we could start charging. But it was one of those things where we didn't want to like flip-flop. So like once we went to like charging, we didn't go back to like free. Yeah, free. Yeah. I don't really have that same mentality now because a lot of stuff that we do now with, you know, Colors and RNBOnly and the events that we produce, it kind of just depends. Like if it's a new market, or sometimes we just might be like, yo, we want to surprise people and do something cool. And
so at the same time that you're starting Colors here, because you guys were doing it every Friday, right?
No, we were doing it every month. Colors in LA started
monthly.
It was a monthly.
Okay.
Thing. Yeah.
But it wasn't Friday, right?
Dragonfly. It was on a weekend. It was on Friday or Saturday. It wouldn't really matter.
Because I remember the early ones I couldn't go because I was also
working. You were there all the time. Yeah.
But were you still like the video stuff and everything, like that's still going to be your kind of like grind and figuring that out?
Yeah. So yes and no. Like, I mean, so I was doing stuff like, I was always coming to LA from New York, right? So like I was doing like, at the time I was doing stuff with Macklemore. I did like a mini documentary on Issa Rae, and like I was doing stuff out here just constantly with a bunch of people. But yo, and I still do random film projects. But I just realized like you are not going to make a living doing this. You know what I mean? Like, as simple as that.
Yeah.
Like, it just hit me one day. Like,
Okay.
I was like, this is how I want to make a living. I want to be known as a filmmaker, and I want to be able to produce stuff that I want to produce and show people this is this new artist that you should be checking out, or new you know, whoever. But then I just realized, like, the way that this type of business works is if you have a lot of money, if you're a media company, and if you sell advertising. Like, that's the, you don't make it from being like this, like, art house documentarian. You know what I mean? Like, or just like telling stories you want to tell. Documentaries don't scale like that. Like, so I was just like, yo, you got to figure out something else. And that's when I started to get serious into the events.
So so you saw the events as a way to possibly make a living.
Definitely.
Even though that's also just as dangerous, maybe.
Yeah. But for me, I was like, yeah, this is how you're going to definitely make a living.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking that it was going to be this company that generates millions of dollars, but I was just like, this is just going to be how you make a living. Because at the time, the thing is, like, I mean, I was making, it's funny, I was kind of making, like, now I have, like, overhead and burn rate and fucking office space to pay for and shit like that. But at the time, I was like, you know, if we made like $7,500 one night, you know, it might have cost me $1,000 to do it. You know what I mean? But paying my DJs, photographers, and like, I'm going to the bank, dropping off $6,000. You know what I'm saying? And I'm doing this like New York, DC, and LA. You know, I was rolling in the dough at that time.
And so what do you think made it connect? Did it work before RNBOnly started off as its own thing?
For sure.
So the Colors parties were just rocking. And you had obviously your previous connects in DC, and you had them in New York. And so those were the places you also focused on outside of LA.
Exactly. So like, I had all the music industry people that I knew in New York. Mm-hmm. They would come to our stuff. I had all the college people that I knew in DC. They would come. And in LA, I had my new connections. Yeah. You know what I mean? What
made it interesting enough or unique enough that people came to the event, though, you think?
It was 2 words. No VIP. That was it. So, like, at the time, bro, in LA, you know, this is the height of Playhouse, the height of, you know, that whole Hollywood strip, bro. You know what I mean? Like, this is when, like, especially like black nightlife was still popping in LA. And it was just like, you know, I don't know, Bootsy Bellows and, you know, I mean, just I mean,
table service clubs,
exactly.
Basically,
And it was like, you know, we specifically, I mean, the only people that were in this venue that we had our colors in at the time, was grunge punk bands. You know, like, I mean, that's who was in there. Like, bro, we would come into the venue and, like, you know, there would be like I'm not a drug addict I'm not a drug user, but like, it would be like, I don't know, like shit that like acid would be
paraphernalia.
Like, paraphernalia. You know what I mean? Just like just stuff that, you know, you could tell it's not you know, a hip hop thing going on in here. And so the no VIP thing just was like, and it was just a free for all. You know what I mean? Like, people, like, back in this time, like, it would be me hosting, DJ on the decks, bunch of people in the crowd, little outdoor patio, and it would be it was like the littest party, you know, and it was 2.5 years of just good, clean fun. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it was a limited number of fights. You know what I mean? I'm talking about like over maybe 40 parties, maybe we had 2 fights or something like that.
And then, I mean, you told me this a little bit before, but was it as unintentional as you said it was, or one day you were just like, yo, would y'all come to an R&B party? Or like, were you thinking about it and just wanted to see?
So I would always tell my DJs at the end, I would be like, yo, let's just slow it down, man. We're playing too much YG and, it was just getting crazy. And I was like the last hour should be R&B only, and I was just saying that. I was just like, yo, the last hour, R&B only. And I just, it just got like nuts. You know what I mean? I just saw the energy shift, and I saw I feel like some people were coming specifically for that last hour. You know what I mean? And I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like how, cause it's the same thing as kind of now where we weren't just playing like old R&B, we were playing new R&B, we were playing old R&B, we were playing everything. But it was just that vibe change. And I stopped the crowd one day in LA. I'll never forget. And I was just like, would y'all come to something if we just did R&B only? Yeah. And the crowd went crazy. Everybody was like, yeah, hell yeah. What you mean, man? Shit. And the next, I sent an email out and I just called it R&B only.
Yeah.
As I was like, the name wasn't particularly cool at the time, but I was just like, I need to make just a marketer in me. It's like, yo, just simple. You know what I mean? Because I had so many people asking what is Colors? Colors. What do you mean? Is this only for colored people? People are just so insane. You know what I mean? But it was just this ambiguous name that I had, and the name didn't mean anything. But I was like, whatever I do next, I need this thing.
Super hyper specific.
This needs to scream what it is, And that first joint had as many people as was at Colors.
Was it the same venue?
Nah, different venue. I knew I had to switch the venue up. But I made it was a smaller venue, but it was super packed.
Yeah.
Like Colors. And it was just like, okay, we had to move the venue. So we moved the venue, and then it was like really
Did you immediately charge for that first one?
No, free again.
So it was free, and then
Yep.
But you knew immediately, oh, okay, people are coming to this. So how long after before you started actually charging?
Probably 2 times. Something like that. Maybe 3. Yeah.
When, at the same time, speaking on the marketing side of it, because we've talked about this a little bit, but I'd love for people to know, as you start seeing these things, what were you doing on the in-between as it relates to because you said it costs, maybe $1,000 to start, to produce one of those parties.
Yep.
So in the digital era, what does that mean for you? Were you running Facebook ads? Were you doing what promo were you doing to get people to these joints? To get new people to them? Yeah,
at the time, no. It was just I was just really adamant about making sure that we would send enough emails out. But see, this was back when I was spamming people.
Yeah.
I would never suggest this. But I was spamming people, and just, getting people, just encouraging them to share with their friends and stuff like that. And I think a lot of word of mouth was going on. But I wasn't doing anything other than email marketing that would get new people aware in the early days. It wasn't, when I found out about digital marketing and paying money to advertise across Instagram and Facebook, that's when the code cracked. That's when the game changed.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, now we are, much more of a marketing company.
Yeah.
Than we are.
What was the first event or first time where you're like, oh, this is really a thing? Was it when you knew you could do a certain size venue, or was
it honestly, bro, it was when we went to a different city. When I went to Orlando, a city where I literally know nobody in, and 1,000 people came. That's when I was like,
what did you do to?
That's when I found out about the online marketing.
Oh, so you were you found out before, and then you were like,
yeah, I was like, oh, maybe I can get more people to come to this LA show if I start running ads or something.
Yeah.
And then it worked, and I was like, yo, I wonder if we can because I was just like, how can we do this in places where I don't know people. That's how I really scale it. And, you know, I said, basically my DJ at the time was coming off of a Carnival cruise ship. He was DJing on a Carnival cruise ship, and they like the port was in Orlando, or a Disney cruise, one of those. And I was like, okay, well, if I go down to Orlando, that's one less flight I have to get because he's already in Orlando. You know, trying to be frugal, and I was like, let me just run the ads in Orlando. Did that, and it was a wrap.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh shit, Orlando. So we literally went from like doing like 3 cities. In the next year, we jumped to like 38 cities or something.
How far out were you planning for each city?
At this time, these are like before my days of like knowing people at Live Nation and AEG and stuff like that, knowing the right people. God, when I was like cold calling and cold emailing venues.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be like probably 3 to 6 months in advance, mainly on the lower side, 3 months. But then as I started to know the game, I started to understand the game. See, like, this is the, you're talking, right now we're talking about the time of transitioning from a party to a show.
Yeah.
And when I was in party mode, that's exactly what it was. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, okay, this venue's gonna kind of hit you up, or you can get in LA. I had a monthly. You know what I mean? Like, it was like that's in the party world, nightlife. You have a weekly or a nightly or a monthly or a bi-weekly because you have a night. Yeah, and that's what I had at this place in LA. But as I started getting into like the touring and show realm, that's when I started to realize you have to book this stuff in advance. You have to challenge dates. You have to put holds. You have to put soft holds. You have to do. There's just a whole different ball game of.
And you were doing that stuff just by yourself at first, just like calling promoters.
Yeah, we still do it by ourselves. Right. I mean, it's now I have a staff now, so it's not like I'm just doing it. But yeah, it was the same kind of deal. Like, yeah, just call. But I was never calling promoters. So. Yeah. I was always calling
venues
direct. But then I started to realize, like, oh, so like Live Nation owns this or AEG owns this. And you're talking to the same people sometimes when you're like getting stuff. But a lot of times people, I mean, also at this time, bro, I'm telling people, I have a back to the opportunities thing. I'm trying to make it like, oh, this is an opportunity. This is what we do here. People are not trying to hear this shit, though. They're like, yo, you're going to come in here and you have like a DJ and a projector, and you have like visuals, but like you're telling me like, you know what I mean? Like they just didn't get it's not a party, but it's like, what are you guys doing on stage? Like it.
How'd you sell them on it? Because we had this conversation, or you had tagged a piece of a conversation that I was talking about with white rappers a couple of weeks ago, and the ease in which they can kind of scale because they can get into a venue earlier because people aren't really challenging who's going to show up to their events.
Sure. So I had to like 2 things. You have to have an easy sort of like tagline for people, almost like when you're trying to get them to buy into something new. So like that's why when you hear like a lot of movie pitches will be like, yeah, it's like Along Came Polly meets Friday. You know what I mean?
It's always put 2 things together, two familiar things to make something new.
Yeah. So I would say stuff like, have you ever heard of Skrillex? It's like an EDM party. Or sorry, I would say like it's like an EDM show, but with R&B music. And we still say that to this day.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. And so we would just, and people would be like, oh, I think I get what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And you're just like, okay. So, but that would be the way we would sell it. And then I also started to like realize like, I hate calling our show a party. I mean, we don't, like, we never do. But kind of had to throw the pride to the side when talking to some of these like people at venues because they don't understand. So sometimes you just be like, yeah, it's an R&B dance party.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's an element of that to the show for sure.
Yeah.
But I think what we produce and do is very much a hybrid of a traditional concert and a dance party.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that is what we call a show. So, but like, so we just explain to people like, yeah, that, and then they would be like, oh yeah, sure. And then when they see it, they're like, oh, well, this is not really like a party traditionally, you know.
So scaling, it's working. Scaling, it's working. Adding more tour dates, and then eventually you have people that want to come for your business and want to
that was wild.
Want to give you some money to take a lot of it
crazy
in return. What made you start to explore that option, even that you needed investment?
So it happened with like I got with an agent. I don't know. I have to, maybe should I say his name? I don't know.
Is he still your agent?
Yeah, he's still our agent, but he's like,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But he's like a really big agent.
Yeah.
I don't know, these competitors. I don't know how I get down. No. But he's one of the most biggest agents in the music industry. Really big and like more like traditional, like, and as well as EDM music, like more like pop EDM. And so I was already kind of exploring potential investment opportunities, but in my initial meeting with him, he was like, just like, what do you need? I was like, well, what every business needs, like capital money, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm trying to expand. And so he was like, oh, well, I think I kind of have like people that I could introduce you to. And so that led me down that rabbit hole. And once these potential investors saw what we were doing, their eyes lit up because they were like, wow, we are already in this kind of like EDM world. And we invested a lot of money in a lot of these artists and stuff like that. But this is what these people are doing over here in a very similar capacity, but they don't have the same sort of knowledge that we have about kind of touring on a larger level, bigger shows, festivals. And they didn't have the understanding of what we were doing. Yeah, from a marketing standpoint, from a culture standpoint, a lot of stuff. So it seemed like a perfect match. then that just became, quite honestly, one of the biggest nightmares in my life. But ultimately was a very big lesson learned. You know what I mean? And I'm glad I went through the process. And I'm glad that, long story short, they offered me $1 million for a 20% slice of my business, which at the time, even it got down to that. Like at first, I wanted 40% of the business for the mill, and I was like, I already make more than that. You know what I'm saying? Quite honestly, a lot more than that. But like, the problem is I have to spend a lot to make this money. So like, as any entrepreneur, knows like just because this is your revenue, that doesn't mean there's a difference between gross revenue and net revenue. So like, and when you're trying to scale and put money back into the business and back into production and back into holds on venues, and you're thinking about 12 to 18 months down the road, your cash flow is just constantly an issue.
What made you not start to, or just go that option instead of thinking about the ancillary income option in terms of possibly building out things that would be revenue generating that like weren't necessarily
or what are some other examples?
I mean, that would probably be the bigger thing, or throwing other smaller different kinds of shows, sponsoring whatever.
So great question. So all right, I'll run down all of them. So let's just say sponsorship. So sponsorship was always something that we were trying to get. Just never happened. Still to this day.
Really?
Never happened. Like literally, we've never had one sponsor for anything.
Are they just like, nah, or are they?
Okay, so I think there's two things going on. I think that the first thing going on is that we are like well-known unknowns, right? So like we were kind of talking about this previously, right? But like, you know, we sell more tickets than many artists, you know, like we gross more than a lot of people. Like it's just a facts. You know, last year we reached probably over like 100,000 people. The issue is that because we are event driven versus artist name, fame, whatever driven, you know, we don't attract the attention of people that are quote unquote check writers in a sponsorship capacity. Yeah. Also, the other thing there is that like we don't have some like crazy social media vanity numbers. You know what I mean? Like we don't have 1 million followers on anything. We don't have 500,000 followers on anything. Yeah. What we have is
real people though.
Yeah, real people. Yeah, exactly. What we have is definitely over that when you count the reach, when you go Facebook, Instagram, email, phone numbers, all these different touch points, which is why we sell thousands of tickets in every market that we play in. But it's just not one place where you can visibly see how large our audience is. It's really a matter of seeing it in actuality when we play a show somewhere. Yeah. And when we go into a venue and they're like, damn, R&B only just sold more tickets than like this person that's on tour. But, you know, the people that are in the sponsorship rooms and, you know, the marketing directors of a lot of these brands that we would love to be aligned with, they're just not. Yeah. They're not in Orlando, Florida when we put like 2,500 people in a room.
Brands, stop spending all your money on influencers. It's not worth it. Telling you.
So I think that's been a big thing in terms of like sponsorship. In terms of merch, we want to attack that correctly, and we have a limited amount of people on our team. Yeah. A limited amount of resources and a limited amount of time to be able to spend on various things. And merch has just been at the bottom of the totem pole because merch is one of those things that you have to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And then once you really figure it out, then, you know, but yeah, so it's just been difficult in that regard, like being able, now as we're like starting to get a lot of different things in order, I think we're gonna, in the next 6 months, we have a lot more that we want to do on that front.
So it was to other people's money, which is not always a bad thing, but ultimately you didn't do the deal.
I'd said no.
And you decided to write about it though.
Yes, which was.
And what was the
crazy?
What made you decide to write about it and press send?
Yeah, so I wrote an article entitled "Why I Just Turned Down $1 Million," and it you know, I spent a lot of time on it. When I say a lot of time, I just mean like 48 straight hours. I don't mean like, because it was just okay. I figured when the deal started to go south, first off, the deal took me about 4 or 5 months to even get to a point of saying no. And as any entrepreneur kind of knows, when you're dealing with fundraising and like financing, that shit can become a full-time job in itself. And it took, quite honestly, it took a lot of time away from me running my company. You know what I mean? Like now, I mean, I have 6 employees now. Total, and it's a task to run a business. Yeah. I don't have any partners. You know what I mean? Like this is not like there's a co-founder over here and it's just me. And I'm constantly learning how to be the best leader and entrepreneur and visionary, right? Because like I have to run the business, but I also host this show. I'm a part of the production that we produce. So like I have to be on tour. I kind of have to be a tour manager when we're on tour, but then I have to just be the CEO and run the company, and then I have to think about the new ways that we're gonna make money and how we're gonna, continue to compete. And then I have to think about like who to hire and all these different things, and then dealing with like all of the staff's sort of issues. Like people are sometimes like they have issues. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes they're disgruntled. Sometimes they're like, I want to be doing more. Sometimes it's just a lot of things to deal with. But also trying to deal with money woes and raising money for your company while doing all that stuff it was a daunting process. I mean, I lost a lot of weight during that process. Like I was down like 15 pounds, man, just off stress. And the reason why I wanted to write about the process was because I feel like not a lot of people that are like young entrepreneurs that look like us, minority entrepreneurs, I don't think that they even understand sometimes what like taking investment means. Yeah. Right? Like when you look at the stats on investment, if you look at like all of the investment dollars that were like allotted in 2018, I think it's like less than 1% was allotted to black women.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what I mean? And so, like black female founders. And so when you think about it from that regard, and then I was reading that like the average amount allotted to black female founders is something like $35,000. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Like that's a salary for somebody. That's barely that. You know what I mean? And so I wanted people to even just know about these are the things that you might have to consider. These are the things that somebody might ask you to give up. These are the things that you should just be aware of simply. Because, who's going to be there telling them otherwise? You know what I mean? If the money's not even going to that. It's just, there are just so many problems with that space. So I just wanted people to be aware of the sort of dangers. I don't even want to just call them dangers. Let me just say the realities of taking on capital from somebody else, taking on equity investment. That was the number one reason I wanted to help people. But obviously, I got some other intentions. So
trying to get viral in these streets.
So, the second reason was to just turn lemonade, to create lemonade out of lemons, man. It was just like, this is one door closing. I could keep this to myself and nobody will ever know about this, but it took a lot of time from me. And I think when you read the article, it's not this like, woe is me kind of thing. I'm not complaining at all about anything. I'm just shedding light on things. And I'm like, you know what? If I put this out, I think that this is a way for me to have a bunch of, bless you, pitch meetings without going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm going to open up my whole shit. Like, and that's what I did. I let everybody into the hood of my business. You know what I mean? I was very transparent about how much money we were making. I was transparent about the valuations that were offered. I was transparent about where we spent money, how many people I was employing, all kinds of stuff. And what happened after that was just crazy.
What happened? It opened a whole different world.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, well, first there was this, I gotta shout out Black Twitter, because that's who really like catapulted it. Yeah. And there was just, I think, man, ultimately there was this like, we're living in this like renaissance with Black culture right now, and I think that it really feels like how people like how when you talk to older heads or in college when you learn about the Harlem Renaissance and like what was going on with the artists in that movement, and how the proximity of everybody, and how so much great art came out of it. I think we're just in that time now, and I think that people are used to. People are so familiar with the stories of minorities not getting their fair shake or just getting taken advantage of, that to hear about a guy that was not willing to be taken advantage of, and for many this deal might not have been them feeling like they've been taken advantage of, but it was for me.
Yeah.
So I think for you to just hear a story about that, and the number was kind of perfect, you know what I mean? Just
it's one of those perfect even numbers.
Yeah, it was even. It was true. Everything was just like, I think that's why it connected with people. And because of what I said before, people being able to get this insight in this world that they might not have known about. Like a lot of people, send me messages like and tweeted and IG posts, and it was just like, this was like taking a business course, in a 20-minute read. And, I tried to like make the language accessible for people. I tried to like explain things, but still speak how I speak as a 32-year-old Black dude, you know what I mean? But I think that, what happened with the response and people sharing it, like it just like, if you're like a minority and you work a job in the creative world, you probably got that article sent to you, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It was 100%. Like it was that type of thing. And then a bunch of people started reaching out, and kind of like it got the attention of a bunch of people who nothing really materialized. Yeah. And they just wanted to like...
But it's better than wasting your time at a meeting, right?
Exactly.
You went there and spent time.
Exactly.
It cost you nothing.
Yeah. But yeah, ultimately, like, it kind of increased my network of certain people. Like, I know a lot of venture capital people now, that this isn't the right project or idea for them.
But something else might.
But maybe something else I have is, right? I know more brands now, like we still haven't inked anything, we're still talking to a bunch of people, but even on the ticketing world, like I know a lot more people in that realm now, and we have all these deals pending, but ultimately what it really did is we ended up doing a deal with Live Nation, a way better. I mean, we already have a relationship. We're already doing constant work with them, but we did like a larger deal that really helped out a lot of the cash flow issues that we're having. And it was funny because it was like nothing really changed. It was like they just read it. You know what I mean? Like,
they're like, oh,
I didn't even say
that's what you want to do?
Yeah, they were just like, "Oh, you should have told us." But I'm like, "Well, you guys know. I already told you." Like, so, I don't know. It was just one of those things where it was like, it was cool that happened, and it was cool that, I will never forget. Like, I was talking to my assistant because we were editing the article, and I was like, this is her first job ever. Like, she's 23 years old. She's been working for me for almost 2 years now. But I asked her, I was like, did you ever think you'd have a job like this? Like, this is your full-time gig. Like, do you think you'd be in my house helping me edit this article that's going to determine the fate of the company you work for? And she was like, no. But, like, this is awesome. I love doing it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really cool way. Like, I mean, I feel like the people that I employ now, they're at the bottom level. You know what I mean? And they get to see at the ground level how this thing works.
To get back to that, and we can end it on this.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned as a manager, as a founder, that in order to build the right team and then also properly manage them? We can limit it to like 3 things each.
So to build the right team, I think the biggest lesson I've learned is you gotta cut people that are not the right fit fast.
Okay.
I think what's even more important than hiring is firing.
Yeah.
And knowing when somebody is just not a right fit, and because essentially that can become a cancer in an organization, and that can make that can cause a lot of other problems that you don't want. You know, and everybody seems like the right candidate at first. So like people always try to, you know,
it's their best self.
Yeah, right. It's like they're trying to project, you know, how they will be in the organization, but until they're in the thick of it, you're not gonna know. You know, so I think knowing when to get rid of somebody is important. I also think that from a managing perspective, I think that knowing that everybody has different styles of learning, everybody has different styles of getting their work done, and everybody has different styles of, everybody receives information differently. So, you know, how I interact with my assistant is not necessarily how I might be able to interact with my production coordinator, you know, which is not the same way how I'm able to interact with my lawyer, or, you know what I mean? But also having a style that, because you are the founder and you are the head, you have to sort of establish that this is, you know, you are creating the culture, but that you also want input in the culture. And it's not just this like monolith, but it's like, okay, we all have a hand in this thing. You know what I mean? I think those are the big things.
What if you had to adjust? You learned about yourself, in terms of in how to be a better manager.
Oh, for sure. It's and this is a lot of people, I'm sure, that are like sole founders, but micromanaging, you know, just always looking over somebody's shoulder, giving people the freedom to do what they need to do, and then come back and then critique. I'm not perfect even now, you know what I mean? Like, I started this thing by myself. And now it's grown into this thing that, you know, so many people are involved with, and you know, it's how a lot of people make their living. So, while it's super close to me, I gotta understand, and, you know, I gotta give people the freedom. Even sometimes that comes down to like creatively, you know, like it may be something that goes out that as a creative, I'm like, oh, this isn't really my vibe, but you just got to get it out.
You have to, there's a point with which you have to let other people hold your baby.
Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect analogy.
Because otherwise they'll never be incentivized to want to do anything if they don't get it.
Yep. So I think, you know, that's, and that happens in so many different realms, you know what I mean? Like, it could be something as simple as like how you respond to email, or it could be something as simple as like, you know, how you deal with artists when they come into our space, or how you, you know, or how you give direction to other people in the organization, right? Because we're at a point now where like, I'm not the only one giving somebody direction, or how you give direction to, you know, a partner or a vendor or something like that. You know, there's a lot of things that go on in the company now that I don't even see, you know, so
you have to be able to trust
I have to trust that, that whatever's going on is I have the right person in place. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Proud of you.
Thanks.
It's awesome to see, and we'll just leave it at that, man.
Yeah.
I look forward to everything that comes from Colors Worldwide, RNBOnly, and whatever else you figure out how to invent.
Yeah, I got some more stuff.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, man. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Make sure you follow us at freerangepodcast.com. And make sure you check out Jabari. He's at Jabari. Amazing. At GoDouble at GODOUBLE0. Free range. Peace.